Hi, I'm Gabe Pollock, and welcome to Live at the Bop Stop. A world-class musician, composer, arranger, and educator, Diego Rivera has entertained audiences for over 20 years. Rivera is known for his muscular tone and unique blend of straight-ahead jazz fused with music inspired by his Latino background and heritage. On the heels of the announcement of him being named the director of the Butler School of Music at the University of Texas, Diego joined us on tour supporting his latest release, Mestizo, with his quintet. From April 9th, 2022, it's the Diego Rivera Quintet, live at the Bop Stop.
Thank you very much. Cleveland, how we doing? Well, we are absolutely, positively, and without a doubt excited to be here. This is, this is hopefully a sign of better days. You know, like Gabe said, this was the first gig that was canceled as a result of, you guys are there, you know. But I remember being on the phone that morning and thinking, man, do I really take a band out on the road at this time? You know, we really want to play. I just didn't know what the right thing to do was. And called Gabe, and we had both actually just cracked open a fifth of whatever we were drinking. Be like, don't worry about it, it's cool. So, but he's true to his word, and all through the past 2 years, he's made this a spot for reflection and for healing, because music heals us all, and I don't know what I would have been able to do. I don't know how I made it through it were it not for music. So give a hand to Gabe Pollock here. So, let me introduce you to this outstanding band. First of all, on the piano, I spend a lot of money to make sure, I'm well put together and everything, but this cat always comes through in the clutch with the baddest shoes in the band. How about a hand for Jordan Anderson on the piano? Originally from Miami, Florida, how about a hand for Javier Enrique on the double bass violin? From the fighting city of Ypsilanti, Michigan, Ann Arbor, Michigan. He is the professor of jazz drums at Indiana University. Our relationship goes way, way, way back. Several pounds and several belt sizes smaller. And we've been playing music ever since. We first met at a jam session, and it was like that instant chemistry. And so glad to look over to my side and see this man on the drums. How about a hand for the great Sean Dobbins on the drums and cymbals? And this is a gentleman that's no stranger to swinging music and high energy and about everything else. If there's some killing music happening, it's probably because of the result of this man. He plays with Stevie Wonder, the Columbus Jazz Orchestra. He's really a Detroit staple, and someone that I've looked up to for a long time. And again, it's always I know it's going to be a fun night when I look over and see this gentleman. Give a hand for Dwight Adams on the trumpet. And as you can probably assume, we are the Diego Rivera Quintet, so obviously my name is, Inigo Montoya. So. My name has been butchered, and names are very important. With a name like Diego Rivera, growing up, Adagio Irivar was the worst it's ever been butchered. That felt almost like punishment, like they did it on purpose. I could never prove it, but I need to go back to that high school and see, I got to have a word with them. In any event, we are celebrating the release of our newest record entitled Mestizo, and that first selection was actually the title track from my first record with Positone Records, my record label, and that was a tribute to the sort of bond that we have as musicians. As a matter of fact, these 5 musicians in this configuration, we've never performed together. But we've had many experiences among each other, and it's the bond of jazz and the bond of jazz music that brings us together. So that first selection was appropriately entitled Connections. And we would like to continue. I am a professor of jazz, and as such, y'all will get a lecture from time to time. I hope I'll keep it interesting. I promise there's no test. There's no exam or anything like that. However, I do want to share a couple of things about my culture. I am Mexican American. I'm Chicano, and I celebrate my heritage proudly, and I use my music to bring aspects of that culture to others. There's a consciousness really that started to develop in the last 50 years or so in Chicano culture. And it's a word, I think this kind of exists in almost every culture. It's something that signifies things that are commonly considered low class, right? Or, from the impoverished class, or things that are from a lower level of sophistication that are elevated by that culture to be considered high art and a point of pride within that culture. I'll give you an example. Does anybody have, or anybody ever owned, or anybody been to a house where there's a piece of black velvet art? And there, everybody seen that, right? Yeah, so you see that, and it's considered kind of tacky. But the thing is that in Chicano culture, like if you go into a home, Mexican-American home, that serves as actually like the centerpiece of the home. And it's the centerpiece of the culture, and the centerpiece of it's not really a home until you hang a picture of Elvis or whoever it is, in the home. Other things, there's like, if you spend any time around Texas, it's the bathtub that's turned on its side and made into an altar, and it's painted. It's paper mache puppets that they hang from a string, and it's filled with candy. We know them as piñatas. It's also the dingo balls on the low rider, right? Or it's just the idea, these sort of things that we hold in high regard, and it speaks to us. And I think because these are so simple, it speaks to our survivalist nature. And there was a word that was used by by the Spaniards, the colonists in Old Mexico, and it was actually a Nahua word, a tribal word. That's where the root was, and they used it against the people. And the word was Rasquache, and now we've kind of reclaimed that word and used it as an attitude of our survivalist mentality. So we truly hope you enjoy this next composition of mine, simply entitled Rasquache.
1, 2, 3.
Thank you very much. Y'all having a good time? So, one of the things that I'm most thankful about being a musician is, music is a way to help not only listeners, but musicians also, kind of process the things that we feel and process our emotions. And, I think it's incredibly important to have that outlet. I think that's why most musicians gravitate towards music, especially, after those first couple years of sounding like a water buffalo in heat, you actually get to something, actually get to enjoy, everything that music has to offer. And, I always knew that, once I got to a certain place or I got to a certain level of ability, I was always going to use my music to express, my thoughts and my feelings and just paint an accurate picture of the way that I saw the world around me. And it brings us to this next composition. Having roots in Mexico and having, my ethnic heritage and ethnic background in Mexico, the situation and, the events of Mexico, hit me very deeply and very, very, very personally, very close to home. And, without getting into the things that usually kind of corrupt this conversation, partisan stupidity and all that sort of stuff, just talk about human nature. We have a serious problem that's still not really fixed along the southern border of our country. The aspect that really hurts me is the idea of families being separated, children especially being taken from their families. And you can debate why that is, that's up to people with, fancy jobs and things like that, but I think we can all agree that it's important that children are around their parents and children are with their families, Who knows what the fallout is going to be like. So I wrote this song, and I'll give you the narrative. It was the place that I had to go in order to be able to get just the right emotion and just the right sound that I was looking for. So in Spanish, we actually don't have a word for lullaby. There's no word for lullaby. There's no direct translation. And so this is the story of a mother singing a lullaby for an empty crib. And in the middle of the song, you hear the child crying themselves to sleep. And the only way that they see each other now is in each other's dreams. And that's when you hear the melody kind of come together. And and so that's the place that I had to go, and that was the narrative I had to use to try to get the song and the emotion out of this. So we would like to perform an original composition. And again, there's no word for lullaby, but this is the word that we use. This is the phrase that we use. We use the word or the phrase crib song or song for a crib. This is Cancion de Cuna.
You're listening to the Diego Rivera Quartet, live at the Bop Stop.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was a tune made popular by the Chick Webb Orchestra, composed many, many, many years ago, entitled Stompin' at the Savoy. And, Chick Webb's band, as well as Cab Calloway's band, the great Cab Calloway, was a really important band for jazz music because it fostered so many great connections. I spoke a little bit earlier about, the experiences and the things that bring musicians together. And a lot of times it's the musical spaces that they share. That's where all of the influence comes in, and that's where, you spend some serious time with other musicians on the road. You're bound to, end up talking like them and end up, eating what they like to eat and, other bad habits, but we won't talk about those. In any event, we talk about this thing of influence, and there's always this narrative or this discussion of where jazz actually came from. And it comes from a lot of places. There's actually a lot of different kind of pathways to arriving at what we know as jazz music. And one story that I'd like to share with you is probably a lesser known story, but nevertheless a very, very important story, especially in terms of the creation of jazz, the inception of jazz. So around the late 1800s, New Orleans was host to the World's Fair and Cotton Exposition. And one of the bands, and they invited music and musicians and artists and industry folks from all over the world to share their innovations. And one of the bands was from Mexico. It was actually a military band, the 8th Cavalry military band from Mexico. And they were playing this new style of music known as danzón. It was heavily based on the habanera rhythm. And a lot of these rhythms and a lot of these dances that seemingly came from Latin America, now we know because of African diaspora and the slave trade specifically, that a lot of these rhythms and dances were part of the cultural wave of music and art and dance and all these sort of things that made their way west, albeit through through something as horrendous as the slave trade, but nevertheless, especially in the Caribbean and South America, there was a lot more retention of this culture. And that influenced the musicians, it influenced a lot of these artists all around the Caribbean and in South America. And they kind of make their way through Mexico and then back to the US. So what you have is this Mexican military band, and they're a huge success, a huge hit in New Orleans, so much so that a lot of the musicians from that band actually find work and end up staying in New Orleans. And so we're talking about the late 1800s into the early part of the 20th century. And a lot of those musicians start publishing music and start teaching lessons. And actually a lot of them become some of the first educators to some of the early jazz musicians. So if you think about the trumpet tradition in mariachi music, and you think about the sound of the trumpet and how important the trumpet is to that culture, and then you think about the prominence of the trumpet in American jazz music, that's a direct influence. One family in particular, there was this family of French clarinetists who had moved to Mexico and played in the orchestras there. There was a gentleman by the name of Lorenzo Tio, and him and his son were some of the most important clarinet pedagogues in the early part of New Orleans as it became a little bit more thriving musically. And some of Lorenzo Tio Jr.'s first students were gentlemen like Sidney Bechet, Barney Bigard, the clarinet player for Louis Armstrong. They were all taught by this family of Mexican clarinetists. And there's actually a fable. Are you all familiar with Duke Ellington's composition Mood Indigo? Right. So there's a section of that song that's extremely lyrical. And it was fabled that Barney Bigard co-wrote that song, and this melody was actually a clarinet exercise that was given to him by Lorenzo Tio. And so it translated into it and made its way into that song. Nevertheless, it's a very interesting story. And jazz is something I fell in love with when I almost immediately as soon as I started playing saxophone. And whenever you're into an art form, whenever you're into something, you try to see yourself inside of it. You try to identify with something in there, right? Because it makes it a little bit closer. It makes it feel like, yes, I have a stake in there. There's somebody like me that's doing what I do. And for a long time, it was hard for me to find that. But that didn't diminish my love and didn't diminish my ambition for really learning this music. But when I found this story, it became a lot easier for me to connect with it. And it's just a shame that this story is kind of hiding out in the shadows. But that's why I'm here. So we truly hope you enjoy this next composition. And I hate to pull the curtain back on compositions a lot of time, talk musical jargon, because I mean it's not your responsibility to understand what we're doing, right? You don't need a music degree to sit in my audience, but you can hear the danzón rhythm. What the rhythm section will play, that's the danzón rhythm. So this one is entitled Sombras del Pasado, which translates to Shadows of the Past. Thank you. Thank you very much. We have one more selection for this half of music. Have y'all enjoyed yourselves? Very good. So, there's a phenomenon that exists, especially in communities of color, that is something that's not necessarily widely understood or widely recognized, or even there's not an awareness of, and I'll share it with you. Growing up Chicano, growing up Latino, I was met at times with certain things that were, difficult to face, difficult to explain. There's misunderstandings, and that leads to a lot of, very difficult conversations. And then there was just outright bigotry that required a sorting out of a different sort, if you know what I mean. And I thought, growing up and, as I moved through adolescence, I thought the hardest part, and even young adulthood, I thought the hardest part was actually going through those experiences. Although when I became a musician and became an artist and started sharing my experiences and really just coming into myself, I found that it wasn't necessarily the experiences that were difficult, but it was sharing those experiences, explaining those experiences, and not being believed. That was actually the hardest part. And this is something that folks within communities of color they deal with this. We deal with this every day, explaining our reality to those that don't believe that reality exists. If it's happening to you, it's very real. And just because it's not your experience doesn't make it any less real to the people that it's happening to. So this phenomenon is something that you encounter every day. And I composed this tune right after the verdict was read in the Derek Chauvin trial. And I remember, mind you, I got bit by this thing that was going around. I was full-blown COVID. I was as sick as could be. And I was every ounce of strength that I had to kind of hold it all together. And I remember them about to read the verdict, and I remember just bracing myself, just thinking, to myself, is this really going to happen again? Again? I don't know if I can take it. And then once one guilty verdict was read, I started to cry. I just let it all go. And my girls, who are 6 and 8, they were 5 and 7 at the time, they asked, why I was so emotional. And I let them know. I said, because it's important to know that everybody in this world deserves dignity. And everybody in this world deserves a chance to, and that right to dignity. Just because you don't like them, that doesn't mean you can do whatever you want to them. And so this kind of encapsulates that feeling, that phenomenon, that thing that we feel every time you have to explain your situation in a civilized manner at best to those who don't believe it. So we truly hope you enjoy and think about this next composition. This one's entitled Battle Fatigue.
Sean Dobbins on the drums and cymbals. Javier Enrique on the bass violin. Jordan Anderson on the piano. Mr. Dwight Adams on the trumpet. Yours truly, Diego Rivera, saxophone. So we're gonna take a short pause for the cause. As you can imagine, we're a little, it's exhausting. So, but I'll be over there selling CDs and meeting all of you. So please come over and say hi. Take some of the music home with you, and we'll be back with more music. You've been listening to the Diego Rivera Quintet. See you all very soon. Thank you.
First of all, put your hands together one more time for Mr. Sean Dobbins on the drums and cymbals. Mr. Javier Enrique on the bass violin. Originally from the Twin Cities, that's Jordan Anderson on the piano. And from the Motor City, Mr. Dwight Adams on the trumpet. So this next composition is a portrait of a program that was the result of so many men leaving the country after the beginning of World War II. So as men were leaving the U.S., this created an incredible labor shortage. So what the U.S. did in its infinite wisdom is reach across the border and invited a large number of Mexican immigrants to come in and fill some of these jobs. They promised them, a living wage. All right, they kind of foolishly promised them that they would be free from persecution or, bigotry. They'd be treated fairly. So there was a fundamentally flawed program. It was known as the Bracero program. And what it did see, though, is saw a large number of immigrants to the U.S. To work. And it's kind of a complicated situation because although that it was an incredibly flawed program, it had a number of problems, it also served as some of the first steps for a lot of these Mexican families, Mexican immigrants, to establish roots in the U.S. and eventually, start their families here in this country. So this song kind of paints the portrait of almost like a chant, almost like a work-like melody, and then you hear the optimism and the hopefulness in the center before we return back to the reality of hard work and labor. So we truly hope you enjoy this composition. This is entitled Bracero. Thank you very much. Thank you, Bracero. In the early part of the 1900s, there was an essay written by a man by the name of Jose Vasconcelos, and it was essentially a discussion. He theorized that there were, four major races on the planet, and as a result of mobility and communication and migration, amongst a number of other things, that eventually these four races would combine and kind of mix and create a fifth race, and it would be the next evolution of humans. Now, this essay was not without its controversy, and people kind of used it to advance their own political motives or what have you. But it was something that I read very early on in college, and it was something that I kind of would reread at least once a year. And it was interesting, and I'll get to that in a second. But Vasconcelos claimed that what would happen is, like, because of the mixing of races and because you'd have all of this cross-influence, that you wouldn't necessarily see the next evolution of humans be a biological one, because seemingly a lot of the things that separate us biologically would eventually go away, or they would be indistinguishable from one another. And so what he theorized was that the next evolution of humans would be an aesthetic evolution as opposed to a biological evolution. It'd be our consciousness and the fact that we are made up of so many different parts. We would learn to reconcile with one another and create what he would call the cosmic race. And every year that I wrote it, or that I would read it, I would come away from it, with something different. I would take something new from it, and that's when I realized, the importance of art. If it's visual art, or if it's creative art, created art, be it music, be it writing, be it visual art, be it something like that, because the art actually stays fixed. It never changes. And it was fascinating that every time I came to it, I would take something different away. And that's when I realized that maybe we already are going through an aesthetic evolution, because the art is the fixed point. We as humans are the variable. The art never changes. So as we develop, as we grow an appreciation for the things that that people see in making art in the world as a reflection of the world as they see it, maybe we're gaining an understanding of aesthetics, right? So it was very, very influential, and it inspired the next composition. And if you can hear it, it doesn't really have a home. It's kind of like it moves all around the planet. So we truly hope you enjoy this next composition entitled La Raza Cosimca. Thank you, La Raza Cosimca, which translates to the cosmic race, for anyone keeping score. And we would like to continue with another little piece of history. This is a story that I was told. This was the result of my mother doing some serious research into our family history. She was able to trace our family all the way back to the Alamo and beyond, as it was. So the mission just south of San Antonio, Texas, the Mission de San Jose, was being constructed. And there was a gentleman by the name of Pedro Huizar, right, who was a missionary, a priest, and more of a land surveyor. He was kind of like one of the architects on the mission as it was being built. Was building and working on this, and he sent for his wife, was with child to come over and join him, and in Texas, and they were going to start a life together. Unfortunately, the ship sank as it was making its voyage to the Americas, and completely distraught, completely devastated by this was this man Pedro Huizar. And so on the southern wall of the mission, you see this elaborate and just really, it's not very big, but it's incredibly elaborate, this rose window that he had carved. And it was a tribute to his late wife and unborn child. And it's significant to me in a number of ways. This was when I was just getting into the idea of taking life, or especially tragedy, which really interested me, and how to see how artists take that and reinterpret it and use music to process things so explainably difficult in our life. The other reason why it was significant to me is Huizar is actually my mother's maiden name and my middle name. So this is one of our ancestors that actually carved this window. And I was thinking about this, as we're starting the drive from San Antonio down to the mission, and I was just thinking about it and kind of picturing in my head what it would be like, and I wasn't ready for actually standing in front of the rose window. But as soon as I saw it, this melody came into my head, and I couldn't wait to get to my saxophone or a piano or something to kind of jot it down so I wouldn't forget it. So we hope you enjoy this composition. This one's entitled The Rose Window. Thank you. Thank you. So we have one more selection for you this evening. Have you all enjoyed yourselves? We have had a wonderful time. One more hand for Gabe and all the folks here at the Bop Stop. You know, they really, you know, Gabe and all the folks, Gabe especially, you know, he really kept the candle burning all through this time. And, you know, he gets it. He gets it. He understands how important it is for us to have this space as musicians. And he certainly understands how important it is for y'all to have this in your community. So please support this place. Tell your friends, tell everybody you know. And if it's your first time, please make sure it's not your last time. One more hand for the Bop Stop. So we're going to close this show with the title track from my newest product, CD. You can't say album. They're gone. Actually, no, they're making a comeback. But they're expensive, man. They're more expensive than gas. And that's expensive. In any event, this is kind of the if we were to sum up everything that we're talking about, mestizo actually is a word that's used to describe a person of mixed descent, specifically with Latino and European heritage. But, you know, the record company and I, when we were deciding on the title for the album, we thought that it was incredibly important to use this word as the title, or to use this, you know, this concept, because, you know, it's something that needs to be entered into the lexicon of American culture. The idea that we're a mix and that we're better together than we are separated. So we truly hope you enjoy all the music this evening and learned a little bit more, that you've grown a little wiser, and that you enjoyed what we were sharing. So we truly hope you enjoy this last composition, title track from the newest record. This one is simply entitled Mestizo.
Sean Dobbins on the drums and cymbals. Javier Enrique on the double bass violin. Jordan Anderson on the piano. Mr. Dwight Adams on the trumpet. Yours truly, Diego Rivera, saxophone. Well, it's been a pleasure performing for you. So we're going to take a short break and be back in a few months, I guess. That's shorter than 2 years, but we're going to make it happen. Until then, take care of yourselves, take care of each other. We love you madly. You've been listening to the Diego Rivera Quintet. Y'all be cool. Good night. Thank you.
Live at the Bop Stop is made possible by the Music Settlement, serving Northeast Ohio by offering music instruction, music therapy, and early childhood education since 1912, with a mission to welcome all to our music and arts community to learn, create, inspire, and heal. This program is recorded at the Robert Conrad Studios at the Bop Stop in Cleveland, Ohio, with additional production by Graham Rosen. Editing for WOBC and WNPA is provided by Dr. Pete Nagley, and for our podcast and other radio affiliates by Sean Gilbert and Carson Gilbert at Gilizar Media. The executive producer is Daniel Peck. For extended versions of all of our shows, our Live at the Bop Stop podcast can be found on your favorite podcast app, or visit our website at www.thebopstop.org. To reach out directly, email liveatthebopstop@gmail.com. I'm Gabe Pollock. Join me again next time, live at the Bop Stop.